All right. Hey, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We'll give everyone just a minute or two to hop into the call. We already got yep, starting to fill up. Give us just a minute. Hope everyone's doing well today. Feel free to drop in where you're at, what's going on where you are into the chat. We'd love to hear from you. It's sunny in Boston today. It snowed earlier this week. Who knows what's going on anymore?
Who knows what's happening next?
Exactly. All right, give it just one more minute. Got Alexander from Salt Lake City. Rainy out there. Figured you guys would have gotten the snow, but yeah, it's it's a weird time all around. And thank you for the humble brag from Mike in Florida, 83 and sunny. All right. Great. I think let's get started. If you want to hit next slide there for me, Kyle. Great. Hey, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us. This is one of our standard office hours, but we're doing something a little different this week. We're having a kind of Form 3 Q&A and Form 3L, Q&A and overview with our head of Form 3L product manager, Kyle McNulty. So we'll get that started in just a few minutes. Next slide. Just a quick overview of some other content we've been doing lately. Last week we had a similar office hours session with Christina Perla from MakeLab NYC, who talked about how to set up her experience setting up a print farm and how they've pivoted to working during the COVID-19 period, and they're making a bunch of parts for folks all over the world. Today, as you can see, this week, this Q&A with Kyle. And then next week, we're having kind of an entertainment focus, which will be really fun. So on Tuesday next week, one of our customer support reps, who's also a pretty prolific ZBrush modeler, will be doing some live stuff on Tuesday at 12 noon on our Twitch channel. So that's twitch.tv/forumlabslive. And then in this same slot, our webinar slot next Thursday, a week from kind of right now, we will have Daniel De Leon and Eamon Akhtar, who are two of our super users who are also entertainment industry focused. And that'll be really, really cool. Lastly, just before I hand things off to Kyle for the majority of this time, please keep dropping chat into chat. And if you have a question for myself or Kyle about the 3L or anything else that we're talking about, please use the Q&A function at the bottom. I will be watching these throughout the entire presentation, collecting them, and we'll get to the Q&A period at the end. And then we'll get to hopefully some of these questions, but hopefully a lot of them will be answered throughout as we go. Yeah, I think that's it for me, Kyle. Feel free to take it away.
Sounds good. Thanks, Dan. Cool. Hi, everyone. Thanks a lot for joining us today. My name, as Dan said, is Kyle McNulty. I'm the Form 3L product manager here at Formlabs. So really excited as we get closer to shipping Form 3L over the next couple of months to start talking about the product and continue talking about it over the next several months. Just a quick overview of what we're going to be covering today. We're going to go through some of the top FAQs we get around Form 3L just to answer those questions right away so that you don't have to sit through the whole presentation to wait for some of those. Go through a quick product overview of 3L, some of the technology inside, some of the benefits of that technology, how it ultimately gets you the best parts possible. And then I'll do a live demo of this unit that we have here at our headquarters, and then talk about some of the parts that we have. I have a bunch of parts off camera too, so we'll go through a whole set of 3L parts. And then we'll get a preview of the 3L sample part, one of the 3L sample parts we're going to start shipping when the printer ships in early Q3. And then we'll use the latter half of the hour for a Q&A session. That's what Dan just mentioned. So if you have questions, please do submit them through there, and Dan will be checking those out, and then he'll be asking them, and we'll go through them in the latter half of the session. So a little bit of background about me. I got started with FDM and SLA printing at part of Purdue Engineering. It's where I went to college. And then I've been at Formlabs for the last year, been working on 3L the entire time. And before that, I came to Formlabs by way of being a customer. So I ran a small hardware startup around a Form 2, one really hardworking Form 2 that we used over about a year and a half to produce something like 1,000 parts to do low volume production of an IoT camera. So really, after using that printer for a year and a half, it was so reliable and the parts were so good that I just had to work at Formlabs. And that's how I ended up here. So going right into these FAQs, first and foremost, the biggest reason Form 3L exists is the fact that it's a large format machine. It's our first foray into large format SLA printing. So the build volume is 33.5 centimeters in height. In width, that's its longest dimension, and then 30 centimeters in height, it's its second longest dimension, and then depth is the smallest dimension, that's 20 centimeters. So for those of you that are familiar with Form 2 and Form 3, that is 5 times the build volume as those printers. The kind of comparison that I like to use is just looking at these two parts. These parts represent the largest build volume you can print on a Form 3, and the largest build volume you can print on a Form 3L. So you can kind of see, just get an idea of the overall volume difference there. The parts have gotten a lot bigger. We're very excited about. When is Form 3L shipping? We will begin shipping in early Q3 of this year. And then in terms of pricing, the Form 3L basic package is $10,000, and that comes with one printer, one build platform, a resin tank, and a finish kit. And then our resin cartridges, we'll talk a little more about the full library later, but we have a large library of materials that you can use with these printers, and they start at $149 per liter, and some of them go up from there a little bit. Continuing on with some of the questions that we get asked most often, what materials will be supported on 3L? So our full material library will be available on a rolling basis as we validate settings. So every time we launch a new piece of hardware, a new printer, we have to go through and test and validate the settings for each material with that printer. We're going to do that on a rolling basis. We're already doing it now, and we'll continue to do it for the next couple of months. But when Form 3L starts shipping in early Q3, Gray, Tough 2000, Draft, Clear, and Elastic will be available. And then, as I said, the rest of them will come out on a rolling basis. Typically every couple weeks or every month, we'll have a new set of materials that just appear on the printer and in preform. When is my printer shipping? So if you've already placed a pre-order, thank you very much for your support, first and foremost. We appreciate it. If you have, you should receive your printer in early to mid Q3, depending on how close to our April launch, April of last year, you placed your pre-order. So if you were earlier in the queue, it'll be closer to early Q3. And then if you place a pre-order now, it will arrive in late Q3. So please do feel free to place a pre-order now. And then finally, is there an automated solution for washing and curing? At launch, we are going to recommend a third-party product that we validated in-house and we're really excited about. They provide great results. So that'll be, we'll have more information about it then, but the basics are it's a Tovatech large format wash unit that allows you to wash 3L size parts, like this build platform or this part over here, starting at about $3,400 US, and then a photocentric large format cure unit similarly allows you to wash really large 3L or cure really large 3L parts starting at $3,700. Great. So for everyone who's new to Formlabs, I just wanted to do a brief overview of our products and our company. We have two main versions or technologies in 3D printing. We have selective laser sintering, or SLS technology, and then our bread and butter that we founded the business on and grew the business on is STEREOLITHOGRAPhy, or SLA. So we have our first SLS product called Fuse 1 coming out later this year. We've been working on that for several years, and we're really excited to get it out around the same time as Form 3L. It's going to be an exciting year all around. And then within SLA, since that's been our core business for 8 years, since 2011 when the company was founded, there are 3 printers within that. So there's the Form 3, which is our core desktop machine. It's smaller build volume, about this, sits on your desktop. That is the upgrade for the Form 2, which we were shipping for a number of years. And then the Form 3L, which is same exact technology. We'll talk about it throughout this presentation. You can essentially just think of it as a scaled up Form 3. And then Form 3B, which is our equivalent to Form 3, but for printing specifically with our dental, medical, and biocompatible resins. And then finally, there's the last step in an SLA printing workflow is washing and curing. We'll talk details on that a little bit more later. We have an automated washing unit, piece of hardware that does that for you, and then an automated curing unit called the Form Wash and the Form Cure. So all those products together, in addition to our materials library, makes up our SLA portfolio. To touch on the specific form of SLA that Formlabs has, back in April of last year when we launched the Form 3 and the Form 3L, we introduced something called LFS, or low force stereolithography, which is our unique take on stereolithography. It's a more advanced form that uses a flexible tank and linear illumination to produce just incredible part quality, surface finish, smaller supports, and larger support, or larger prints overall. So that technology we'll touch on later actually allows us to go to full Form 3L size parts, which is exciting. So if you've used the Form 2 before and you haven't had a chance to look inside a Form 3 or Form 3L yet, there's a virtual tour that Dan will link a little bit later in the presentation. The inside of the Form 3 and the Form 3L look totally different than a Form 2. So that's that switch over to our new LFS technology. The engine of the machine is just it's a whole different beast now, and the parts have gotten even better than they were before. So the workflow that you'll typically go through, LFS product workflow, is you'll start in whatever your CAD preference is, SolidWorks, Inventor, whatever it is, Onshape. You'll create your digital model and then typically export it as an STL, which is just the interchange file format that we use. And then load that into our software for slicing and preparation called Preform. So that's a free software that we offer that allows you to orient your parts to print it, add supports, which is one of the things required in SLA for printing your part successfully, and then preparing the job and actually sending it to the printer. You prepare your file in Preform, and then you click a button that says print. It gets uploaded over Wi-Fi to your printer, and then it will appear on your Form 3, your Form 3B, your Form 3L. So in here, we have a couple of models that are already preloaded on here. So we have these vacuum nozzles, which are sitting over here, and this Demaxium, which is sitting over here. And then I'll go through this in the live demo, but it's a 3-step process where I insert a resin tank, a build platform, and cartridges, and then I press print, and you just let the machine run. It's that easy. So then we would come back at the end of that, whenever the print finished, and remove the print from the printer. And then there's a couple more steps to get to your final part. Then we would take that and wash it. For smaller parts, you can do it in the Form Wash. For the Form 3L, you'll do it in those third-party solutions that I mentioned a couple slides back. The purpose of that step is to use solvent, typically IPA, to wash away any leftover liquid resin on the part. That gets removed, and then you put it into a cure unit, which uses the same wavelength light as the printer uses to get the part to its full material properties. So for several of our resins, especially our engineering resins, we recommend that step because it gets you the full mechanical properties of the material. I think everyone at Formlabs generally says this. It really is my favorite thing about SLA and Formlabs overall is our material library. So one of the big benefits of SLA is you can do a really wide range of material properties and applications. So we have over 20 at this point. We have different categories: dental resins, jewelry and ceramic resins that you can use for casting, engineering resins, standard resins that offer really great surface finish and fine details for things like modeling different characters. And then within our engineering resins, you get all kinds of different behaviors. So we have something called elastic that behaves very similar to silicone, or rigid, which is glass filled and it's really, really stiff, good for printing really thin walls. There's overall, the benefit of SLA is we have these interchangeable resin cartridges, and you can just swap one out for another. There's no purging necessary. It takes 2 seconds to swap from one to the other, and you can get an entirely different material behavior. So a really single printer and just a multitude of applications. That was a quick overview of Formlabs, specifically SLA or LFS ecosystem. So diving into the Form 3L, which is our large format product within that portfolio. We'd like to talk about the 4 main core features of the printer. First and foremost, it's large build volume. As I mentioned before, it's 5 times the size of the Form 3 build volume. And just to give you kind of a sample of some of the parts, that we've been printing here beyond what's on the table. So I'll just place a couple on here, and then we can look at them in more detail later. So during the live demo, I'll show better close-ups of those parts. So second is that LFS technology, which is our more advanced form of SLA. What this allows us to do is print these parts. The overall benefit of LFS is it gets you significantly lower peel forces. So when you're printing with an SLA, you're curing one layer at a time, and you're stacking many layers on top of each other, and that's what gets you your final printed part. When you're curing each individual layer, for several seconds, it's very, very fragile. And the more forces on that part, the more likely it is the layer is going to get damaged. And if you stack several hundred or several thousand slightly damaged layers on top of each other, your end part might not have the greatest surface finish, or you may have lost some fine features. So with LFS, we've been able to significantly reduce peel forces. So there's really not all that much happening to the layer. The layer comes out perfectly, and you stack a bunch of perfect layers on top of each other, and you get a great looking part. Third, it's the same powerful, kind of reliable print process that everyone has come to expect from Formlabs. If anything, it's even better. So we took one of the big pieces of feedback from Form 2 about repairability and contained our optics in a modular unit called the LPU, or the light processing unit. So the Form 3 has a single LPU, and the Form 3L has the same LPU, just two of them. So you can actually buy an extra part if you ever want to just have it sitting around if after a couple years of printing something happens to those optics. And you can use it interchangeably between your Form 3, your Form 3B, your Form 3L. And it takes, to swap out an LPU and replace one that might have gotten damaged, it takes several minutes. So it really is an easy step. So overall, that combined with Formlabs remote technical support, everything is set up to keep you printing nonstop as much as you need. And then finally, cross compatibility and uptime. Uptime I just touched on a little bit, but our resin cartridges, probably one of the decisions we're most excited about, are cross compatible again across all our printers. So if you have a Form 2, if you have a Form 3, if you have a Form 3B, all of the printers use the same resin cartridge. We'll see in the live demo, the Form 3L just uses two of them. But it really, you are set up to have a farm of many different types of printers. So you can use a Form 3 when it makes sense for you. You can use a Form 3L when it makes sense for you, depending on what part you're printing day to day. So these are a couple of illustrations that I wanted to show because it allows us to get a little bit deeper into the printer in ways that we can on the camera. They're pulled from a Form 3L virtual tour that we just published. So Dan, now or later, we'll post that in the chat. Definitely check that out. If you haven't had a chance, we have an equivalent one for Form 3. If you haven't had a chance to see Form 3 or Form 3L in person at a trade show, especially kind of in these times where it's hard to get to trade shows because they've all been canceled, it is a fantastic view into the inside of the printer, the outside of the printer. Yeah, really recommend that walkthrough. So here, the clip we're seeing is the tank is inside the printer, and we see the two LPUs moving underneath. So normally the tank is not clear. It's shown as clear here just for illustration purposes. But that area moving underneath the tank is the two LPUs, and it scans back and forth. So that's the linear illumination part of LFS. And then to talk a little bit more about that tank, the tank represents the other innovative part of LFS, which is a flexible film tank. This is part of the way that we've been able to reduce peel forces so significantly. So looking at this tank in the video, which might be a little hard to switch to, so I'll show it again in the live demo. The bottom of the tank is actually flexible. So it's a two-layer film that is flexible versus the Form 2 tanks, which were rigid bottom. So going into this second illustration, we see the overall printer opening the cover right now, and then it will zoom into the tank. So this is the part we saw on the previous slide. And then the tank's going to cut away to look directly at the two LPUs and a section on top called the rollers, which covers both of the LPUs. The rollers have a clear glass window in between them, and that's what the laser comes through. The laser then points into the resin and cures your part. So that's a quick look at the inside of the printer. And again, please do check out that this was probably a tenth of the overall virtual tour. So definitely check out the rest. You can look throughout the rest of the 3L at some of the specifics that we won't have a chance to cover today. So diving under the hood, and just reiterating a little bit of what I talked about before, the Form 3L technology is the exact same LPU as Form 3. And so the reason we always say 3L is just a scaled up 3 is there are just two LPUs. The LPUs are staggered along the y-axis. So there's an overlap region in the middle of the build volume that both LPUs can point at. So any point in that overlap region, both lasers can hit. And then there's a small region in the back and a small region in the front that only one laser can hit at a time. So overall, what that eventually means for print times is depending on where you put the part in the build volume, there can be a print time advantage. Overall, if you print the same part on Form 3 and the same part on Form 3L, you can expect to see equivalent print speed or faster print speed, depending on where you put it in the build area. So if you took a dental arch and printed that on Form 3, and then you took it and you placed it in the overlap region on 3L, you would see a print speed boost because the two lasers in that overlap region will actually share the load of printing that part. Touching on just hassle-free maintenance overall, our support team is incredible and able to operate fully remote. So there's no service contract required for any of our printers, not even for 3L. Everything you can either replace yourself, just talking directly to our service reps, or yeah, it lasts for several years with no issues. And then the LPU is fully replaceable if anything goes wrong after thousands of hours of printing. And then finally is cross compatibility. So we talked about how the resin cartridges are the same across all of our printers. It's also the same preform. It's the same dashboard. So everything is just designed for you to have that mixed use farm of Form 3s, Form 2s, Form 3Bs, and 3Ls. And then lastly, there are several integrated sensors in here that are similar to the Form 3, and they're designed to just keep you printing nonstop. So the overall goal of this machine, we expect people to use it for more production-oriented workflows, and it's designed to just print 24/7. The way we use them internally at the office right now is we just print nonstop. They really never take a break, and that's exactly what the machine is designed to do. Touching on some of the technical and product specs, the XY resolution is 25 microns. So what that means is the laser is capable of moving in 25 micron steps. The laser spot itself is approximately circular, and it's 85 microns in size. So it's an 85 micron circle that's actually drawing out your parts, but it can move in increments of 25 microns. The build volume, to switch it into inches, is 13 by 8 by about 11 or 12 inches, with, again, width being the biggest dimension, height being the second biggest dimension, and then depth being a little bit smaller. The laser power is 250 milliwatts, and there are two LPUs, so there's two lasers, and the price is $10,000. And like we said, there's also two resin cartridges that go in this cavity on the right side of the printer. So hopping into the live demo now, I'm going to stop sharing my screen so everyone can see this. Dan, can you just confirm that my video is pinned now?
I am still seeing the presentation. There you go.
Okay, I think we're all set.
Yep.
Cool. So I'll just move these parts out of the way. So what we have here is one of the latest prototype Form 3Ls that we have. Actually, this is one of the early production units. So over here, I have a tank and a tank case. A little bit harder to see. So this is the case that would actually hold your tank when you need to store it, and then a build platform. So we're going to walk through what you would typically do when you're starting a print on the 3L. As I said, I already prepared the model in preform, and I had pre-uploaded it to the machine, so it's already loaded onto here. So the first thing I'm going to do is open the cover. This cover is assisted by a gas spring, so it's really easy to open. Really feels great. I'm going to pick up the tank from both sides, and this is, if people didn't get a chance to see when the video was smaller before, this is the Form 3L resin tank. So very similar design overall to the Form 3 one. It has that flexible bottom film. It's just significantly larger. I'm going to go ahead and slide that into the Form 3L. Slides back right like that. That's inserting the tank. It's as easy as that. I'm going to go for the build platform next. So the build platform, very similar design to Form 2 and Form 3. It's just, again, larger. It has these handles that make it really easy to lay flat on a table, which has been a helpful improvement. Slide that back to the printer. I'm going to close the build platform latch so it's secured there. So now the build platform and the tank are in here. We're all set with that. I can go ahead and close the cover. And the last step is I'm going to grab 2 resin cartridges. So these are 2 gray resin cartridges that I've already unpackaged from how you would receive them if we ship them to you. There's a plastic cover underneath here that I had already taken off. So then I'm going to insert these right into the printer, the cavity over here where they sit. And these go right back into the printer and sit right like that. So the workflow that we are going to recommend and ship, and you'll see in documentation, is if you need to do a really long print job, you can manually pre-fill the tank by just dumping a full liter of resin into it, and then have 2 full cartridges over on the right side. And that would allow you to print up to a 3-liter print. So if you needed to go away for a 3-day weekend and you wanted to let your 3-liter print, which to clarify is a really, really large print, let that go without pausing and asking for more resin, that would be the best way to do that. What we've seen most often now is the best way to print is to, from a speed and material usage perspective, is to hollow out your parts. So all the parts that we've been printing so far tend to be between about a ½ liter and 3 liters. The printer can go up to a 20-liter part. It's just that we haven't found very many applications for it, but it absolutely can. So just to look at a couple of parts here, this is a full build platform of a vacuum nozzle part. I'll talk a little bit more about this later. This will actually be one of our sample parts that we're shipping with Form 3L. So you can fit 21 of them on here, which is really exciting. This is a part of a Velociraptor model printed in dental model. So I can show some of that detail that you get. So same exact detail you would expect from Form 3, just scaled up. Here we have a full-size femur. So this is the femur of about a 5'10" person and would never be able to fit on Form 3, but can fit just right like that on Form 3L. You can fit 3 of these femurs at a time, so you can do one job with 3 of these femurs. And then to look at a different material, that one was in clear. This is a draft print. Draft is our fastest printing resin. It has generally about 2 to 3 times the print speed as most of our other resins. So it's really great for a rapid turn prototyping when you need to iterate through several versions of a design. And then if you need a presentation ready prototype near the end, you can switch over to something like gray. So we were internally, this is the casing for the LPU that I mentioned before. So our engineering team was internally just using the Form 3L to do exactly that. They were rapidly iterating through different versions of the LPU in draft, printing it in something like 20 hours, this large of a part. I don't know if it's quite easy to tell how large it is. And then making a couple design tweaks and moving right on to the next version. And then the final presentation version that they use in the design review, they printed in clear. To touch on some of the surface finish that I mentioned that you get out of LFS, I'm still amazed about it, really, a year later. You just can't see layer lines anymore. So that's been one of the things that all of our customers are excited about with Form 3. And it translates right to 3L. This is an OXO spoon that some people might have, available from Bed Bath & Beyond, I think. Yeah, it's just, there's not much of a layer line to see, so just a perfectly smooth gray part. And then last one I'll show, get at fine features. Those are the two big benefits of LFS we had talked about, really fine features and good service finish. So this is a part that has a really, really fine lattice inside of it. It's actually not support material. It's a fine lattice that the designer modeled in to show what you could do with a internal lattice structure. So this is not support material. It's just a really, really fine lattice built into that part. And then the parts that are supposed to be solid just have that smooth surface finish. Okay, I'm gonna switch back to the presentation now.
You're good.
And are you seeing this?
Yep.
Okay, great. Great, so that was the quick live demo of inserting all the accessory or consumables that you need to put into a 3L and some of the parts that we're getting off it right now. Next thing I want to talk about is back. So the stage we're at overall with 3L right now is we're validating our final materials. We're starting to produce them at our factories, and we are doing a round of beta testing. So we have 2 beta tests starting this week. We have another 3 starting in a couple weeks. And we've been beta testing actually since December. We've been trying to learn as much as we can from our users. So this was the first beta test we did with a company called Optimus that's based over in Boston. They're an MIT-founded startup, and they develop self-driving technologies for really efficient transportation. Their core product right now is a self-driving van, so that's what you see pictured in this photo. And the problem that they had, that they came to us with, and why we chose to do a beta with them, is they needed to print really large sensor enclosures for all the sensors that they add to the vans to enable the self-driving capabilities. And they were using service bureaus, so they were sending out those parts, and it was taking them a week or 2 to get them back, and it was really, really expensive. So they would pay several hundred dollars for a part. So for that quick turn iteration, that's one of the main benefits of 3D printing. They weren't able to do that with the service bureau because it would take them 2 weeks to get a part back. So that's why they were particularly interested in Form 3L for those large parts. And overall, they were incredibly pleased with the printer. Here's a photo of Luis, the mechanical engineer, quoted here, also pictured here, showing one of the parts that they got back from the service bureau. That's the black part she's holding, and the same part printed on 3L. So previously she was using the service bureau, and then for the period of time they had the 3L, they were able to switch over to that. And the big thing she emphasized when we talked to her after the fact is previously it was either ship it out to a service bureau, or if it was more time sensitive than that, she would kind of painstakingly do what a lot of us do now for large parts, which is split it into several parts, print it on a Form 2 that they had in usually 6 or 7 pieces, and have little tabs all across it, and then take it out, post-process it, and glue all the pieces together to get your big overall part. It's really a painful process. It works, but it's much easier to just print it as one. So for a lot of the massive enclosures that she needed to do, she was able to do it in 1 or 2 pieces, which was just a great shift. And then second, Luis was just overall really pleased, and the Optimus Ride team was really pleased with the service finish of the 3L parts versus their Form 2, which they were already generally happy with, but the thing they appreciated about the 3L parts is they didn't have to do any sanding. They were using these as relatively cosmetic parts, so they put them, their ideal use case was to put them right on the car and then send the car out into the world. They didn't want to be doing a bunch of sanding and then painting. So they were able to do that directly with the 3L parts. There weren't layer lines that are that dead giveaway that, oh, this was a 3D printed part. It was smooth enough that it was able to be used as a cosmetic cover. Okay, so that is a check into the beta test that we did back in December, and we'll definitely look to talk about all the ones we're doing now in a couple months when we start shipping the printer. be excited to talk about all those users. So lastly, before we hop into Q&A, I wanted to hop into a preview of sample parts. So the first sample part that we're going to be shipping with 3L, and we'll have several others, but this is the first one, is a part called the vacuum nozzle. So it's what's pictured here and in this photo. It's printed at 100 micron layers in gray resin, or gray V4 resin. It is 96 hours per job. So this entire print job of 20 nozzles takes 96 hours. So what that equates to is about 5 hours per nozzle, which really is a print time that could enable low or even medium volume production. If you need to make several hundred of these for a project early on before you can switch to a larger volume production solution. Resin usage, each nozzle this is an individual nozzle. Each nozzle is 63 milliliters of material. And so that works out to $9.45 of material per nozzle. Yeah, and overall, we're excited about this workflow. We've been able to print a lot of them at once. So it really has been a great kind of trial run of short run batch production internally here, where we're producing hundreds of these nozzles a week with just 1 or 2 printers. Great. So last thing I wanted to touch on, we are getting ready to start shipping the Form 3L in early Q3. So it's just 2 months away. And we really want to make sure we accurately predict demand and make sure that the lead times are great for everyone. So as part of that, kind of related to all the change that's happening due to COVID, we hugely appreciate just if you filled out this survey. It's a 2-minute survey. There's a couple questions in there. Just trying to understand whether your interest in Form 3L overall has changed. Your buying interest, what you're looking to do, what your top remaining questions still are about the printer, so we can make sure to work towards documentation that addresses those questions by the time we start shipping the machine. And just an extra thank you for filling out that survey. Please do, if you fill it out by Monday the 28th, so just a couple days from now, we have 20 of these parts already printed, these vacuum nozzles that we'll send to a randomly selected group of people. So I hope you really love the part. And again, yeah, it would just, me, the engineering team, our entire company overall, all the feedback that you put into that form will go directly to our design team and our manufacturing team. So we hugely appreciate it if you could take a couple minutes to fill that out. Okay, I think Dan, if you want to come back on, we can transition to Q&A.
I'm back. Hello. Yeah, thank you so much, Kyle. That was great. A lot of really good information, and we have a lot of questions that we will absolutely not get to all of them. So I apologize, but I will get to as many as I can to sort of cover what I think are the big things. Start off, Andrew asked a couple questions, and I think they're all really good. First, he said, as I understand, Formlabs SLA printers do not print solid models, only shells. Actually, Andrew, it's the other way around. By default, SLA printing is always, if you want to use FDA terms, 100% infill because you're printing out of a liquid. If you want something to be hollow, you need to model it hollow before you do that. Next one Andrew asked is, what dimensions does the Form 3L fit in while it's open? And that's a great question, Kyle. Have we released like a separate set of dimensions for when the cover is up?
We have not. We definitely will by ship because it's one of the big questions that comes up. Right now, internally, we've been leaving 42 inches of clearance on shelves to be able to handle the cover all the way open. And that basically gives you like an inch of clearance between the top of the cover and the shelf.
And how high, it's the perspective is weird. How high would you say roughly above the top of the closed printer, how much higher it is when it's open?
It's about 12 inches higher.
Cool. And then the last question on this first run here is, given a properly made file, what is the mean time between failures? While you were talking, I looked this up. This is a pretty standard industry term for, how often things break under normal usage. I assume, Kyle, we're still doing pretty significant product testing at this point, and we don't have those numbers, but we will. Yep. We're certainly looking at it. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. The general, the way we usually talk about it is print success, and the general print success that we look for out of any given Form 3, and we look for the same out of a 3L, is around 90 to 95% print success. Which means 95% of those prints you're doing are succeeding. And in terms of the entire volume is coming out, all the supports are there, the surface looks correct.
Yeah, and we figure that accounts for the kind of natural failure rate of hanging something upside down from a printer. Next one here, great question from Patrick. This question applies to the Form 3 and the 3L. How challenging was the development of the low force portion of the Form 3 family? Would you say this portion of the design has been finalized, or is there still room for improvement in the reliability and robustness of this part of the printer's function?
We don't expect there to be much more required improvement for LFS. We're always trying to make the process better and reduce those fuel forces even further. But yeah, the LFS overall, we've been working on for just about 4.5 years. So it's gone through a lot of iterations already internally before we release it. And so, yeah, we're pretty happy with the form of it that is in Form 3 and Form 3L right now.
Awesome. Good question from Scott. Will the Form 3L also play fly form? I don't know. If anyone isn't aware, we released an Easter egg a little while ago, a week or two ago, that is essentially Flappy Bird running on our interface on the printer. If you search for that on our social media, you can find the special code it takes to get there. But maybe Kyle can say whether that'll end up on the 3L as well.
It might not be there when the printer ships, but we will definitely get it in there with a firmware update later. It's too cool not to have it
there. We got a question here, Kyle. Someone said they heard your recommendation for our current recommendation for a wash solution, but they were curious. Can you go back and remind them of the cure one more time?
Yes, it's the Photocentric Cure L. So if you Google that product name will pop right up, and that starts, it runs $3,700 US.
Cool. Great question here from Pat. Could Kyle speak to any of the trade-offs to consider when moving from the 3 to the 3L simply due to the scale? Do the supports need to be larger? Are there bigger dimples, stepping marks, etc.?
There aren't bigger stepping marks or dimples. The supports, when the printer ships, they may be a little bit smaller than Form 3 is currently, because we've had about a year of optimization on Form 3 support chips, because we've been shipping the printer for a year and we haven't quite had that optimization on 3L yet. But you should expect, similar to Form 3, over the next year, we will continue to try to shrink down the support size for 3L. I would say the biggest consideration is just keeping in mind the fact that there are 2 separate LPUs, and depending on whether your print, the most important thing for your print is accuracy or fine features versus speed, there's considerations you want to take about where to put the part. So I had mentioned before, if you're doing a small part that fits within the overlap region and you want absolute speed, you want to make sure it's in that overlap region. So just keeping that consideration in mind, that there are 2 LPUs, is I think the biggest transition from operating with Form 3 to operating with Form 3L.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Really quick, I've seen a couple times being asked in the chat, what's the process for switching resins? Do you need to purge or clean the tank? Short answer, no. Mostly with Formlabs printers and materials, you want to have a tank per material, basically. In really dire situations, you can swap a tank from one material to the other. We highly recommend doing against that, though, because even if you clean it out nicely, little residual amounts of the old resin can affect the printability of the new one. Yeah, Kyle, have you noticed any differences between kind of our standard cartridge and tank swap processes on the 3L, other than there being 2 of them and larger? Anything else you've noticed?
Yeah, it's exactly the same. So if I'm printing with clear right here, if I wanted to switch to draft, I would go and get a tank, either a new tank or a tank I already had draft resin in. I would take this tank out, put the new tank in, take the 2 cartridges out, put draft cartridges in, and then you're done. You're ready to print with draft.
Awesome. Oh, great question from Kyle in the chat. I just saw this one go by, but I think it's a good one. Are both LPUs used in every print?
Yes, they are. Actually, sorry, let me caveat that. If you don't print, not necessarily, depending on where you put your part, there is a region at the far back of the printer and the far front of the printer where only a single LPU, so only either the front LPU or the rear LPU, can reach. So if you had a part that was pushed all the way forward to the front of the build area you would not actually use the back LPU, or vice versa.
Yeah. Richard asked, at Form 3 launch, several users experienced issues with rippling on surfaces of small parts. We delayed the 3L after. Are we tuning each resin still? Has the issue been resolved? All that sort of stuff. I will say from the 3 perspective, the work on that side of things is never done. We always want to improve the print results. And Kyle, maybe you can speak to this, but I assume most of the learnings from the 3 team make it to the 3L team in terms of material settings and things like that.
Yep. That's the great part. It's the same engineering team sitting side by side. So all of the learnings over the last year from the Form 3 have been worked into the 3L, which has been a great opportunity.
Awesome. Yeah. And those improvements, carry over and all that work we've done. So that's good. Will preform files made for the Form 3 work with the 3L? And what are the steps you need to take to swap it?
Yep. So if you had a preform file that was made for the Form 3, you would open preform, open that file, switch your printer over on the right to 3L, and it would take your parts and move them into a 3L size build volume. And you have the option to import the same supports, so you don't necessarily need to regenerate supports, but you could also clear them and regenerate them. So yeah, it's really a kind of one-step process, and then you send it to your 3L. But you can convert the thing, a 3 job right to a 3L job within preform.
Awesome. Katie asks, and Kyle, while you were presenting, I got an answer on this one, so I can feel it. Will there be a trade-in option for the 3 to the 3L? Nothing to talk about right now, but as Kyle mentioned, the survey that's being sent out and is available to everyone watching, a big part of that survey is helping us help you get over any hurdles you have in buying a Form 3L. So if something like a trade-in is valuable to you, please let us know. That's the sort of stuff we want to know about. I don't know if you want to add anything, Kyle.
No, yeah. Ditto on everything you just said.
Cool. Let me see here. Daniel asked, what is the cost or amount of waste in switching resins? As Kyle said, essentially none. If you're not using a material, you're not losing any of that material when it's not in use. It's just in a shelf with the rest of your tanks, essentially.
Yep. Yeah, and that's why we, just to expand on what Dan said, where we have this tank case, essentially just a outer box that doesn't allow any light through. So you store your tank within here, and the resin that's already sitting in that tank will stay safe for a very long time. Mm-hmm. So as long as you don't expose it to any UV light, keep it in this tank case, you don't lose any resin.
Cool. Amanda asks, is the LFS 3D printing on the 3 as well? Yes, absolutely. It's the exact same LPU unit. Kyle, have prices on the consumables been talked about yet, or is that still being worked out?
Yes, they have been worked out. So the resin tank will be $349 US, and the build platform $399. And then the materials, because they're the same, are the same prices that everyone's used to.
Cool. And obviously the printer comes with a build platform.
Yep, comes with a build platform and a resin tank. And we'll also come with a finish kit. I forgot to mention that before. Mm-hmm. So if you don't require, you're not printing as much around the clock, and you don't require an automated washing and curing station, or you don't require curing at all, you can use finish kit, which is essentially just a bucket that holds solvent. And you sit your part in there, it washes away the resin.
Yeah. And I will say, just for anyone who's unfamiliar with Formlabs in general, the build platform is the thing that Kyle held up that the print hangs from. It's an aluminum plating, and for all intents and purposes, you really never, ever, ever need to replace it unless it gets really, really messed up. And I worked on the Formlabs support team for a long time, and in two or 3 years of doing that, I saw 2 build platforms that were kind of screwed up enough to need replacing. Even when they get scratched, they just grip the part better. So it's not a critical component most of the time. Another good question. A large sample part I saw at the user summit had some significant stitching on it where the 2 LPUs meet. An engineer mentioned they're working to improve the blending through software. Has that improved over time?
Yes, it's gotten significantly better than probably the one you saw. We'll try to find an example. Okay, so this is so the stitching area here.
Oh yeah, Kyle, can you make this full screen?
Yes.
Great, thank you.
Am I full screen?
Yep.
So the way this part was laid out, the LPUs met right about in the middle of the spine of this model. There is a very, very small faint line, but in general, it's not really noticeable anymore. So I think overall it's improved significantly from then, and we're still continuing to tune calibration. We'll continue to do so, and it'll get even better. So yeah.
Cool. Christian asked more general Formlabs question, which is I'm happy to take real quick. How do you remove the support structure? For most Form 3, Form 2, all those prints, if it's a big, robust part that isn't a lot of detail, you can most of the time just grab all the supports and tear them off and then do a little light sanding on those supports. If you have a super high detail part, you'll probably want to go in more individually and snip with flush cutters or whatever other tool you have to make sure you're not tearing the details off of your part as you get the supports off. But yeah, Kyle, I don't know if you notice anything special about the 3L support removal.
No, we are continually trying to make them as small and not dense as possible. That's ongoing work. And yeah, to second exactly what Dan said, like these teeth are a great example of ones that you probably go in, there are supports on the bottom of those teeth and individually snip those off just to make sure that you're not doing any damage to the teeth. But all of these supports on the bottom of here, this is a robust enough section that I would just pop these right off. Like this spoon, just to give the supports just come off in one piece and then you have your spoon.
Pretty good light touch demo right there. Awesome. Jonathan just has a comment. We had a great response from your support folks on our Form 3. Thank you. You're very welcome, Jonathan. I will be sure to let them know that those guys work really hard and really do care about making sure people keep printing. So that's really good to know. Let's see here. How long did the big Dymaxion take? Do you have that on you?
The big Dymaxion printed in gray, as it is here, takes about 60 hours. And then in draft, it takes about 18. So that's that improvement you get from draft.
Awesome. Yeah, about 3 times faster. Great question from Kyle. What exactly are the internal sensors monitoring to keep the printer running 24/7? So what is the printer, checking on itself?
So one of the issues that sometimes cropped up on Form 2, and I think, Dan, you could probably speak to this from support, is there would be consumable detection errors that would get in the middle of your, say, 20-hour print. A tank might no longer be detected, and then the printer would pop up and be confused because it no longer saw a tank. That we improved significantly in Form 3, and there's actually even more improved sensors in Form 3L. So both Form 3 and 3L have largely eliminated that failure mode. You're never held up by a consumable, either a cartridge, a tank, or a build platform, no longer being detected. There's also sensors internal to the LPU that are monitoring print to print to make sure your calibration stays consistent. So we have a process in the beginning of every print that does a scan effectively to make sure that the original calibration that we do of your printer at the factory stays consistent. And the reason that calibration is so important is if it drifts over time, you can get worse fine features, or in the case of 3L, that calibration is very important to making sure the seam line that was asked about a couple questions ago stays small. So the sensors that we built into the LPU that can do that scan each time holds that calibration constant over time. There are temperature sensors to make sure that the heating is consistent. We have 2 heaters front and back that fills this entire chamber to 35°C and make sure the resin gets to 35°C. But those are the big ones.
Awesome. Good question from Amanda. Does the printer run on standard wall power?
Yes. Yep,
Awesome.
It's a standard D-plug that you put into the back of a computer.
Can the parts be stacked in the build volume? I think this is a great question to differentiate between SLS and SLA and how we sort of approach those build volumes.
Yep. They cannot be stacked without kind of a bunch of additional work. So you could, I have done this in the past, go into your CAD program and create kind of a lattice support structure to stack like matrix a bunch of smaller parts or even a bunch of larger parts. But normally under kind of normal conditions, you would put, you would be able to have an array of these across X and Y, but you wouldn't be able to stack them on top of each other in Z, because this part ultimately needs to be connected to the build platform through supports. SLS, like Dan just mentioned, that's the main benefit. There are no supports in SLS because the part is retained with the powder that's in the bed. So the powder provides support to the part, whereas the liquid resin here doesn't provide enough support. So that's really the big advantage of SLS, and that's what we're psyched about to use.
Awesome. Christina asks, what is the maximum resin volume that can be used in one print? It looks like it could use up more than a full cartridge. I assume that's true. I can tell you we did right when I started, there was a Form 2, someone had just done a full block of the entire build volume in one go. And that was A, super heavy. I was surprised it finished. And B, like, I think 3/4 or a full liter of resin. It was a lot. So I assume it's more for the 3L.
Yep. If you print a solid block, the full build volume, absolutely no voids, it's a 20-liter part. We have not come across any application where that makes sense. So don't expect to be switching out your cartridges 10 times for a 20-liter part. Generally, the parts we found, kind of all the ones on these tables, range between about 1/2 liter and 3 liters. So up to 3 liters, you don't have to swap anything out because you'll start with a liter in your tank that you'll manually put in there. And then you'll put 2 full cartridges in the printer. You can do up to 3 liters of printing. So this print right here is very large. It's about the full width of the printer, almost the full depth, not quite the full height, and completely solid for no reason other than to test it. And this is I think, 4.5 liter print. So really, like, up to 3 liters, it really gets you large parts. And like I said before, the workflow that we recommend to everyone for 3L is whenever it's possible, hollow out your parts because it'll print faster and you'll use less material.
Awesome. Tyler says, do you have freedom to move around supports and preform like you do with the 3L? Yeah, Tyler, it's the exact same software with the same support editing tools. So whatever you do in the 3 should transfer pretty quickly over to the 3L. And another quick one, Robert asks, is there a way to hollow out solid objects to save resin? Yes, Robert, absolutely. Typically that's done in software that's not in our suite. Things like Mesh Mixer or whatever other modeling software you happen to use. You'll want to do things like set wall thicknesses and things like that. One thing to keep in mind with a Formlabs printer or all SLA is you want to add a drain hole, because otherwise you can create a vacuum inside the part and it can blow out during the print because you're just building up negative pressure inside. I think the Raptor head there has one.
Yeah, the Raptor has a couple of.
Cool. With that, I think I'm so sorry. There are so many more questions that we didn't get to. Kyle, I think what I'd like to do is we can actually export all these questions from the Zoom call. And then maybe we can have you and some other folks on product sort of go through some of the big ones that we see, and maybe I'll put that onto the forums. So I will put in a forum link real quick before I forget. But yeah, Kyle, thank you so much for your time. This was so great and a really good overview. And feel free to, if you want to mention our survey one more time, go for it.
That's great. Yeah, please do. There will be an email. I think right Dan, an email immediately after this webinar to everyone online or everyone that registered with that survey link. Again, we're just kind of overall gauge whether your interest has increased, decreased, changed at all for Form 3L in general, amidst everything that's going on. So it's 4 questions. It takes about 2 minutes to answer, and that feedback is going directly to our manufacturing team, our engineering team, product team. So we hugely appreciate if you filled out that survey. Yeah, like Dan said, let's keep the conversation going on the forum so we can get to the rest of the questions.
Awesome. I just posted the link, so that is all ready to go. Thank you again, everyone, for joining us. We know it's time out of your day, and we really appreciate it. There's so many good questions, honestly. We're almost at almost 100 questions right now, which is amazing. So that's awesome information for us. I'll plug one more time. Check out formlabs.com/formlabs-sessions. That's the best place to keep up to date on all of these virtual office hours, webinars, Twitch streams we're doing. Those things are, that page is updated almost every single day, so it's kept pretty up to date. Yeah, thank you so much again. Hope everyone stays happy and healthy out there, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.